Hi, I'm Rose Regier, and this is Your Real Work. Welcome everybody to episode 7 of Your Real Work. Today's guest is Michele Woodward. Not only does she have a really cool career story, she's done all kinds of neat things. She's been a beer rep for Miller Brewing Company. She worked in the White House with Ronald Reagan, which I haven't stopped name dropping that since I did that interview. Because it's just not something you hear every day. So I'm really excited about that. But she also helps people now to be better at their jobs. So her insight into this project is actually twofold. It's her story, and then it's also how she helps people, possibly like you. Take a look.
When I was in college, I was in a sorority, and I was in charge of the sorority big annual fundraiser. And I looked at the previous year's expenses, and because we'd bought 6 kegs of beer, we actually hadn't had any money to donate to the charity. So I thought, not that I was going to get away with do away with the kegs. I thought, wow, if we got the kegs donated, then we'd actually have money to give to the charity. So I wrote a letter to the local beer distributor asking if they would donate 6 kegs of beer. And the guy picked up the phone and called me, and he said, what you're suggesting to do, that we do is against the law, but we'd like to offer you a job. So I got a job, being a representative for the beer company on my campus. And then when I graduated, they hired me full-time, and I moved to San Francisco, and I did college and young adult special events for Miller Brewing Company. I did that job for several years, and then I came back, and that's when I got involved in politics, because doing events for a beer company is very, very similar to doing events for a presidential candidate, and I'd always been interested in politics. So I came back, and I was the only woman on the road at that time putting events together, and one thing led to another. And ended up on staff at the White House, and that was just, it was great. Because you can do a really, really great job in politics. You can do a really, really, really great job. You can be the best at what you do, and you can still lose your job if your candidate retires or doesn't win. And so I was on the runway at Andrews Air Force Base. President Reagan and Mrs. Reagan had gotten in Air Force One, but it's not Air Force One if the president's not on it. So, on the presidential aircraft, and they had lifted off and were flying to California. And at that precise moment, 12 o'clock on January 20th, 1989, my White House pass expired. So I couldn't go back to the office. We had to clean out our offices anyway. But I had put my purse in the Distinguished Visitors Lounge, because I don't like to carry my purse when I was at events. And I couldn't go back in to get my purse because my pass was expired. So wow. I got a Secret Service agent that I knew, and I said, hey, Charlie, would you go get my handbag for me? And he said, yes, just this once. So anyway, I was out of a job, and there were only 5 people in the whole White House who had the job that I had. So the Bush people wanted to have their people in there. So that's when I transitioned into doing lobbying, before lobbying was a bad word. Then it was just, government relations, and we were trying to do good public policy. And I did that for about 7 years. But then by that time I had a little boy, and I knew I wanted to have another child. And it was just really hard to be a lobbyist with those kind of hours and that kind of requirement and be the kind of parent I wanted to be. So I ended up starting my own business at that time, and did strategic marketing, communications, consulting. I look back now, and I was coaching. I just didn't know that that's what it was called. Called it consulting. Then I had another baby and did that. And then I really evolved into this full-time coaching, do coach training and all that stuff, 2004. The first year that I was taking money as a coach, that August, I made $150 for the whole month. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if this coaching thing is actually going to work out. I can't live on $150 a month. And, so I say that because there are a lot of people who get started and think, oh, this is never going to work. But it does take grit, it does take persistence, and it does take that ability. I think for anybody in any job, it takes the ability to be able to say out loud, here's what I can do to help you. And that's where a lot of people who own their own business, they fall down. They can't say it. It's hard, or it feels braggy. But
Yeah.
unless you can say, hey, here's how I can help you, you're going to be stuck. I believe very strongly that everybody on the planet has the same life purpose. Okay? I believe everybody has the same purpose, and that's to be a force for good in the world. So you could decide to be a force for good by being an excellent kindergarten teacher, or you could be a force for good by being, a compounding pharmacist for kids with, cystic fibrosis or whatever. But you have to decide. That's how you define the meaning in your life. So I would say for somebody who feels like they don't have a meaning in their life, I would ask them, in what ways are you being a force for good? Your personal brand is what other people would say about you if they were asked about you. So for instance, if someone was to say, so what do you think of Michele Woodward? Whatever that person says is my personal brand.
Yeah.
So I really need to make sure that they're going to say what I want them to say. What I want them to say is kind, thoughtful, results-oriented, reliable, all those sorts of things. And that comes so important when you're in a smaller market like Winnipeg or, any small market. Your personal brand stays with you.
To hear our full interview, check out the podcast below. Today's book is a wonderful book, and I can never remember the name, so I'm going to actually have to read it off the cover. Today's book is called A Big, New, Free, Happy, Unusual Life. And this book is all about self-expression and spirituality. This is not directly related to career change per se. However, I would argue that learning how to express yourself in a way that feels good is going to make your life better and get you on the right track to where you want to be. So next week's guest is going to be Joanne Kelly. Joanne is my journalism instructor. She used to be a news anchor, a producer, and before that, she was a bank teller.
When you put yourself in a box, man, you're missing out on so much stuff that you'll never know about yourself.